Hey, welcome to the Real Estate Life with Kevin Rouse. This is your host, Kevin Rouse, and I'm excited this week. We're going to talk about hard money. Hard money. I get calls in the office all the time. Should I use hard money? What is hard money? So I have our great guest, Daik with Noble Mortgage and Investments, who's a hard money lender. He's going to talk about what hard money is, when you should use it, some of the pitfalls, some of the successes. So DJ, hit that music, please.
Support for this program comes from the Digital Broadcasting Network, presenting podcasts and web series from everyday people who have an extraordinary passion to make the world a better place.
Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate of Life with Kevin Rouse and friends. And I am pleased today to be joined by, this is Money May. Just a reminder, this is Money May. And this week we are talking about hard money. Hard money. What is hard money? Is it really hard $1 bill? I mean, what really is hard money? How do we finance real estate transactions? So this week I am pleased to be joined by, I would say, someone that's been in this game for, how long have you been doing this before I even say your name?
Don't age me now. About 22 years. 22
years. And so we have not talked in actually probably 5 or 6 years, but I'm on his email distribution list. I've had clients use his services unbeknownst to him. And so I'm pleased to be joined by Daik, who is the president and CEO and founder and chief everything at Noble Mortgage and Investments.
Yes, that's correct.
Right, Noble Mortgage and Investments. And so ironically, I've been on this email distribution list probably since you've had an email distribution list. And the other day, as I was thinking about Money May, and I get calls in the office all the time, Darel, about hard money. I do a lot of commercials, so commercial hard money, residential hard money. I said, I need to have somebody on the show to talk about hard money. And so I appreciate you in very short notice coming to visit with us today. So before we get to hard money, before we get to Noble, I kind of want to get I always ask my guests kind of their background. How did you get into real estate? What's kind of your background? Are you from Houston? Kind of give us a sense of who you are.
Sure. I grew up in Houston since I was 4 years old. Grew up in Sugar Land. Went to Sugar Land Junior High and Clements High School, all that.
Okay.
And then went to University of Houston for college, and I double majored in finance and marketing.
Okay.
And I thought I wanted to be a stockbroker, quite frankly, when I was in college.
Really? Okay.
So got out of school, got a job at some firm, and did that for about 8 months, and it just wasn't for me.
Okay.
So I actually just kind of stumbled across real estate. A friend of mine worked for a company. They were looking for loan officers. I was like, you know what, this gig isn't working out. Mm-hmm. And got a job as a loan officer with a hard money company.
Really? So your first job was a loan officer with a hard money company,
yeah,
not a traditional
much.
bank. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so they were a private hard money company. And, I just took to it. It just, for some reason, it all clicked with me. It made sense. Mm-hmm. You know, I tell everybody not to be, and not in an arrogant way, but I felt like Mozart on the piano.
Okay.
As soon as I started doing
flow, it was
it
just
right. Made sense, and it came easy to me, and I had real good instincts about it. So I worked for that company for about 4 years. Worked for another company for about 3 years, and then started Noble Mortgage in 2003. Okay. And we just celebrated our 15-year anniversary this year, so we're excited about that.
Wow. So you say you took to it like water, fish to water. What about it gets you going? What is it? The business part of it? Is the real estate part of it? Is the network? Like what about it makes it fun for you?
I love all aspects of it. I've morphed over the years on what I do. Mm-hmm. Now that I'm a business owner, I don't do the transactional side as much.
Okay.
But when I first started, I really enjoyed the transactional side. I was really good at solving problems for people is what I figured out.
Because at the end of the day, that's the job.
That's
right?
what it is. Because when you get a hard money loan, sometimes you've got to figure out the best way to structure it
Mm-hmm.
that makes the most sense for the borrower, for the seller, and everybody else. And I had a knack for structuring, and I still have a knack for that. When my loan officers get stuck on a deal, I'm like, bring it over here.
Right.
Bring it here. Let me show you. Let me show you the magic. And so whether it's getting the seller to take a second, or whether there's all kinds of creative things you can do on a deal. Mm-hmm. And if there's a deal to be had there, I'll figure out a way to make it work. Right. And so that's what really helped me get started early on in the business. And then when I started Noble, slowly grew into more of a spokesperson for the company. Now I do a lot of speaking, and you and I talked about a radio show every other month. And I speak now probably 2, 3, 4 times a week. Right. And that's what I really love doing, is educating investors, helping them realize that real estate is a really good way to invest your money. It's really good. Most millionaires are in real estate.
Right.
In some
most big
fashion.
Companies, their biggest asset is real estate.
Yeah. So it makes sense, and I love when I find people that are interested in getting into it, have no experience, and then they they really turn a business out of it. Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of people that have left corporate world and become full-time real estate investors. It's neat to see.
So before we get into the hard money again, are you, obviously I'm sure you are, but real estate investor, and tell us about kind of your real estate investments and how you started doing that.
Yeah, I'm more of a buy and hold investor.
Okay.
At one point I had about 10 rental properties. I've only got about 3 right now. I've scaled it down. I'm probably going to ramp that back up here in the near future.
Same here.
Yeah, I believe in long-term holds on investments.
Right.
I've never been in the flipping business.
Right.
I do have some
That's
talent.
ironic, though. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not my deal. I mean, that's a job.
Right. No, it
Flipping
is.
houses is a job. And
absolutely.
I have
I've done
job.
it. Yeah. And I prefer buy and hold as well. Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing I'm going to do, I actually have a property right over here on Blodgett, right around the corner.
Oh, okay. Really? Okay.
Yeah, that I've had for years, and I'm actually replatting that property, and I'm going to, because it's all townhomes over here now.
Right.
So I'll probably build some townhomes there eventually. I
Right.
think the market's probably a little bit flooded with townhomes right now.
Right. It is. Yeah.
So I'll eventually tear that down and build townhomes there. But yeah, more of a buy and hold. Typical 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses. Buy them, rent them, just sit on them. I don't really worry about cash flow as much as long-term appreciation.
Long-term appreciation. So location.
Yeah, exactly.
Is important. So as we start to talk about hard money, first and foremost, let's define it. Like, what is hard money?
So a hard money loan, everybody has a different perspective
That's why I asked you.
of what it is. And
Right.
so it's really changed over the years.
Right.
Originally a hard money loan was a loan for someone that quite frankly couldn't get a loan anywhere else, whether they had credit issues or income issues. And you came to this lender and they're like, we'll loan you 50% of the value of that property. We don't care about your credit. We don't care about anything. And so those types of loans and lenders are still out there. But in the residential world and even on the commercial side now, quite frankly, most of our investors are completely bankable. They have good credit. They've got money in the bank. They've got tax returns. So they're using hard money now for leverage, number one, and speed, number two. So, if you buy a property under market value in this market, you go to a bank, they don't care what you're paying for it. They want 20% down. They don't care if you've got a 50% discount. They want 20% down of the purchase price. Whereas on a hard money loan, we're going to lend on either the as-is value or what we call the after repaired value, the ARV. So if you're buying it and adding value to it with repairs or cosmetic or foundational, whatever it is, then whatever that property is going to be worth at the end of the day, we're going to lend on a percentage of that. So you could potentially get up to 100% financing on the residential side. So it gives you a lot of leverage. So even if you have perfect credit, if you don't have 20% to put down on every single deal, you can run out of money pretty quickly putting down 20%. It's a good way to leverage yourself while you build your portfolio.
So let's take I used to like to use a numerical example. So I'll just use a small example. $20,000, you're able to get a property negotiated for $20,000. ARV is $100,000. And so in that particular scenario, identify a property, I got it under contract for $20,000. I call you, your company, and what are some of the parameters and things? How does that deal mature into a hard money loan?
So if you have a property under contract, you're buying it for $20,000. Let's say it needs $40,000 in repairs, so that's $60,000 total. We would send an appraiser out there to tell us what that house is going to be worth after the repairs are completed. If it comes in at 100, we would lend up to 70% of the 100,000. So in that scenario, we'd lend up to 70,000, which is 100% finance. You could even roll your closing costs into that deal.
Right.
That's a hell of a deal, by the way. If you have that deal,
exactly.
give me a call.
Trust me. Yeah, I'm just making. So, I will say this: 07, 08, 06, 09, maybe even an 010. Those deals were out there.
Oh yeah, they were. And if you
7,
bought back then, I hope you didn't sell because those houses are worth double now.
Awesome. Right. You're exactly right. 15, 16, 17, 18, not so much. And I say not so much. You have to find them. They're out there, but they're not as plentiful. I think that's a fair statement. They're not as plentiful.
Well, the wholesalers normally get a hold
beforehand and at their fee, and we'll talk about that here in a second. And so, using that scenario, $40,000 worth of repairs. I got it for $20,000, so you funded me at 70%, so I get up to $70,000 on that particular deal. I close that transaction. And we'll talk about costs and things of that nature, but just from a structural standpoint, now I then have $40,000 to $50,000 to rehab that property. So in working with a hard money lender, how does that rehab process work?
So initially on that particular, sticking with that same scenario, we would fund the $20,000 for the purchase price. plus your closing costs, and then the $40,000 we're going to hold it back in an escrow account and distribute it in draws, just like a construction loan.
Gotcha.
So the hard money loan is they're not going to give you the money and say good luck, fix the house, let us know how it turns out.
Call us when you finish, right?
Yeah, because the risk in the hard money lending business is making sure from the time you close that it gets repaired, because you're lending on future value.
Right.
So we're going to monitor it, send an inspector out to make sure the work is being done and being done properly, and then distribute draws as that work is completed. So at the end of the day, us as a lender, we have a house that's worth $100,000. We have a $60,000 loan, so everything stayed exactly how we wanted it to.
So in that draw process, so I've had clients that work with different hard money lenders, and all of them are different. I'm just curious where you guys are, where when they're working with the contractors, they're having, even though they got the money, they're having to either find a contractor that's willing to work and get their money from the bank as they go, or clients, there are also some hard money lenders that make you kind of spend and get reimbursed.
Yeah, and that's typical.
Yeah.
And that's what we do, and that's how most of the I make it my business to know my competitors as well. But typically, what people have to realize is even if you get 100% financing, you still have to have money.
Right.
And so what that money is used for is you're typically have to give your contractor some money to get started on the job, and then once each draw is completed, then you're being reimbursed for the work.
Gotcha.
And so they do have to have some money to give their now if they can work something out with their contractor where they don't need any money up front,
right? Great.
More power to them.
Most contractors though, no.
Most of them need money up front.
Right. Either labor or or I said parts or materials or something of that nature. So as they're saying, hey, we are finishing, and I'm sure, I know you guys go through this, but I'm just kind of taking people through a scenario. I think that's the best way to learn. They've gotten through, say, demo and rewire, and before they put up sheetrock, you guys call for an inspection so they can you can send someone out there to see, hey, you did what you said you're going to do. Sure. Here's a check.
Yeah, and they can do as many draws as they want, or some people don't do any draws until the very end.
Gotcha.
Because the thing you got to keep in mind is every time we send an inspector out there, there's a draw fee.
Right.
Typically it's like $125. So it's wise to do as few as possible and time that out with your
try
contractor.
to chunk them.
Yes. But they can do them weekly if they want, but of course those draw fees are going to add up.
So one of the things I always tell people if they're considering using hard money, so we've gotten to the point now, we've renovated the property, we've gotten all their draws, and we're done. And you mentioned that you personally are a buy and hold investor, and so am I, but obviously hard money is used a lot with flippers as well. And so let's talk about exit strategy. When should I define my exit strategy?
Right from the get-go.
Right? Before I even call you, probably, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Or at that time, right?
Well, I would say not before you call us. When we get someone pre-approved, first of all, someone says, I want to start buying houses, it's always good to get pre-approved. So the first question we're going to ask is, what are you going to flip these or going to keep them? Because if they're going to flip them, we don't need much as far as financials from them. If they're going to buy it and hold it, then we're going to treat it like a regular conventional loan. 2 years tax returns, everything, because that means they're counting on me to get them out of the short-term loan.
Right.
Because we do conventional loans too.
Gotcha.
And so we'll ask for 2 years tax returns, bank statements, the whole gamut. Once they find the property, now maybe they find a property, they're like, hey, you know what, this might be a good flip deal as opposed to a rental. That's perfectly fine if they want to do that. But by telling us they want it as a rental, we're actually going to lend them more. We'll lend them anywhere from 75 to 80% of the after repaired value because I can get that type of loan on the permanent side.
Gotcha. Okay, that's a tweetable moment. That's what we'll do, an Oprah thing here. Tweetable moment. If it's a rental, you can go up in loan to value. Basically,
as long as they qualify for a conventional refinance.
Right.
So we'll do a 75 or 80% loan up front, and then once the work is completed, and we do a lot of these loans, we'll refinance it into a long-term loan. It's our rehab to perm loan that we have, and most people are in and out of that short-term loan in 60 to 90 days. And so those are the loans are a good example of people that are using leverage. Even though they can walk into a bank all day long and get a loan, they don't want to put 20% down.
Right.
They want to put down 0, or maybe they end up putting 5% down so they can buy more houses.
Right. And so you stated that you're buy and hold. Again, we're talking about flippers. So exit strategy, again, just as a point of to let people know, is you should have an exit strategy very early in a transaction as to what you plan to do. Now, you might change. In other words, you might say, I'm going to flip this, and all of a sudden, at the end, it's like, man, this is going to be a good rental. I'll keep it, or what I call a long-term flip, which is I'm going to keep it for a couple of years and then sell it. But at the end of the day, it's important. And at least in my experience from the broker standpoint, where I've seen people, one of the ways I've seen people get in trouble with hard money is they don't have an exit strategy.
Sure. Or multiple exit exit strategies.
Multiple
sometimes.
exit exactly. And so, and then I'm getting a call like, hey, how fast can you sell this? Or, and so let's talk about terms on a hard money loan. What are the typical terms for a hard money deal?
In this market, you can expect to pay anywhere between 10 and 13% on the interest rate,
Okay.
and 3 to 4 points at closing.
Okay.
So it is a more expensive loan, and they've got to run that into their scenario. But again, it's not made to be a long-term solution.
Right.
It's
not a
really
30-year loan, right?
It's not a 30-year loan, and the way that we like to tell people is think of it as taking on as it's an alternative to taking on a partner. If someone says, "I'll give you all the money, let's go buy a house and flip it, and we'll split it 50-50." Most people might take that deal, right? Whereas if you get a hard money loan, you're not going to pay 50%. You're going to pay a lot less depending on how long you keep it.
Right.
So it's a great alternative to taking on a partner.
Right. And so you talked about interest rate, 10 to 13%. What is the amortization, and when is it due typically?
So it's not amortized at all. It's typically a 6 to 12 month loan, interest only payments. So when they're making payments, it's only paying interest on the amount of money that's being borrowed or being funded at that
time.
Yeah.
So once you start taking draws, your interest payment goes up. So just
Exactly.
to explain that.
Yeah.
And so that 6 months or a year, you mentioned that. Second way I've seen people kind of get twisted a little bit in hard money is they run up against whatever deadline that they agreed to. That's usually it's 6 months in my experience. And so what happens in that particular scenario from your standpoint? You've had someone, it's a 6 month deadline on the money. We're in month number 5.5. We still, our exit strategy either hasn't worked or we're still not finished. What then happens?
So we can offer them an extension on the loan, a 3 month or 6 month extension to give them more time. And then we'll probably need to have a conversation. Why isn't this property selling? And a lot of times we figure out people are overpricing their houses.
They watched HGTV and saw those that TV show gets more people in trouble than anything.
Yeah, I mean, we get appraisals on these houses,
Right.
and normally our appraisers are pretty close to the mark. Sometimes it might be off, a little higher, a little low, but they're normally pretty going on with data. But some people fall in love with their house,
Right.
And we had a deal this last year that we ended up taking back, and the guy had it $150,000 over appraisal.
Wow.
Listed. We're like, what are you doing?
Because this house was better than everybody else.
Yeah, it was. Oh, yeah. This is. I'm like, you're killing yourself.
Right. Right.
You're out of market, and he never lowered it, and he eventually lost it because
he couldn't do it. So I'm gonna digress for a second. The battle stories, the experiences. Where have you seen? I'm telling you from my standpoint, from a broker standpoint, when I get the call. You're behind in the trenches. Where have you seen people? And the reason I'm doing this is because there are a lot of people scared of hard money.
Sure.
Right? They've heard horror stories. And so I just wanted to dispel myths and from an actual source to say, hey, this is the great things about it. These are the things you have to watch. So from an experiential standpoint, where do people kind of get in trouble with hard money?
Well, first of all, my company, we rarely have foreclosures.
Gotcha.
I mean, we had... we might get 1 or 2 in a year.
That's great. Actually. I mean, when I say great, I mean that's
so it's not very it's not very common,
right.
At least for my company.
But nobody ever tells it went all the way great for me. They always tell oh my God, this one time
Sure.
I heard, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think where people get into trouble is they're not pricing it right. Number one. Number two, they don't get the work finished in a timely manner. Most of the time, the work should take 30 to 90 days, depending on how much work it is. We've seen people that start going from project to project that stretch it out to 6 months. Now they've got to extend the loan. Now they're going into a loan, and so that holding cost gets in their way. It starts adding up their costs, and then overpricing it, like I said, like this gentleman did. He just priced it out of the market. Certainly not a good thing. And so just be smart with it. Listen to your lender. The lenders. The good thing about a hard money lender, it's like a second set of eyes for you.
Right.
And we've seen thousands of deals.
Right.
And so if we see something and we tell you what we think it's worth, that's based on information that's available to us. And then the last thing is probably undercapitalizing. They don't have enough money in the bank to keep making their payments, or maybe there's a cost overrun, which happens all the time on a rehab project.
Right.
You buy the house, you think it's going to cost $40,000 to repair. You start tearing things around. Now, next thing you know, we got to do this.
$20,000 or $5,000 here.
Yeah,
exactly.
And if you don't have the money to absorb those costs,
right.
Your loan's already closed at that point. You can't go back to the well at that point. So
right.
you've got to have contingencies in plan.
So, which brings up another point. Give the folks out there some pointers as to contractors in dealing with contractors, especially now if you're in the Houston market. Now, again, the Real Estate of Life is worldwide. We have listeners in Canada. I've gotten emails from all over the world. But so and these basic principles apply. But contractors, especially in the Houston market right now with Harvey, a lot of people think, well, Harvey was in August.
Sure.
So that should be over with. And I found out personally, actually, that it's not. I just got my roof replaced. So what are you seeing with cost overruns or just dealing with contractors in general? What are your recommendations to your clients when they're identifying a contractor and how to deal with them?
Sure. I mean, obviously they need to vet their contractors, ask for references, I think would be the main thing you would want to do because, and you're right, with Harvey, we had a lot of contractors came in from out of state.
Right.
Trying to make a buck.
Literally out of state, right?
And no problem with that, right?
No.
But how do you vet that contractor? You know
Right.
So I would certainly ask for references and call those references. Some people ask for references and never even call them. Oh, he
Right.
sent me his references.
Right.
So call the references, ask how their experience was with them, and so forth. Because contractors like any other field, there's good ones and bad ones.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So in your particular case with Hard Money Deals, do you guys? You said a second set of eyes. The client picks their contractor, but are there requirements that you guys require that the contractor have that the client picks?
We don't have too many. Obviously, if it's a job that needs to be permitted, we want to make sure that they permit it. If it's a really big job and we've never worked with this contractor, we're going to pick up the phone and have a conversation with them.
Gotcha.
And make sure they understand how we work and how the draws work and so forth. But contractors can get people into trouble too. Obviously, if they're not fixing it quickly,
Right.
They don't hold to their timeline. 'Cause contractors do the same thing. They've got all these different jobs going around, so make sure they have a timeline and they hold them to it.
So one thing I want to also state is flipping has become not only something that we've done or we see people do or I help people do identify properties, but what I've also seen out there is and I mentioned HGTV and Bravo. Flipping has become a cottage television industry as well.
Yes.
And so, which is fun. I mean, it's fun to watch and see. And oh my God, I can't believe it has foundation problems. I didn't calculate that. But I always tell people, those shows are 30 minutes. You didn't see the 3 months of dealing with the contract, and so that is not the entire story. And so I always say, get educated. One of the ways, listen to the Real Estate Life with Kevin Rouse. 2, listen to folks like Darel. But 3, you do a lot of education, like you mentioned before, going around talking. There are plenty of resources out there where you can kind of get educated and not be out there by yourself. Because it does not, my point is, it doesn't always work like the TV show.
No, not at all. And there is so much education available in real estate and networking events where you can meet contractors and meet lenders and meet, brokers and so forth. I mean, I think you could probably go to a real estate function every day.
You could. I get the emails.
I mean, they're every day.
Right.
They're every day, whether it's an educational thing or whether it's a networking thing. They're all over. I mean, my company, we're attending 10 a month typically.
Right. And y'all host quite a few.
Yeah, we normally host about 4. We opened an office in Dallas a couple years ago, so we normally have 2 in Houston and 2 in Dallas every month.
Yeah. So I want to talk about before we end the exit strategy. You've been making distinctions between residential and commercial, and so what's the difference? Commercial hard money. What's the difference in the scenarios we've been talking about as far as commercial hard money is concerned?
Yeah, so the residential is much more cookie cutter. We do a lot more volume in those. We do commercial transactions, mostly multifamily, but we've done all kinds of property transactions. We've done raw land. We've done
Really? Okay.
I've got a loan on a daycare center.
Okay.
We've done retail. We just don't do anything very industrial.
Okay.
Office warehouse, we could do something like that. So on the commercial side, it's really on a case-by-case basis. We don't offer 100% financing on commercial. Typically want them to have some kind of hard equity into it. How much depends on the deal and the borrower and so forth, but typically at least 10%.
Okay.
But we'll typically lend 65 to 70% of the after repaired value.
Okay.
But we still want them to have at least 10%, sometimes 15%. But normally it's a transaction that it's a property that needs to be repositioned and or rehabbed or both.
Gotcha. And so for those of you that listened last week to Dion, he talked about your capital stack. We had a discussion about capital stack. So what Darel is saying is that in this particular situation with commercial properties, you have your money, your money part of the capital stack that Dion talked about is, sometimes 10%. It, again, depends on the deal. So it's a little bit different than the kind of, like you said, cookie cutter residential deals. And so are you finding with the commercial deals that you guys do, are they more owner occupied commercial, or is it investor, or a little bit?
No,
of
mostly
both?
Investor.
Investor, gotcha.
Yeah, the latest one we did a property over here in Montrose apartment complex. It was like an original condition, built in the 50s.
Wow, okay.
So he bought it, was updating everything, did a bunch of foundation work and roof work, and brought the value up quite a bit. And he's just about done with the project at this point. And then he's just going to resell it.
Yeah. So in multifamily, commercial-wise, that's why I've seen hard money used the most as well from the broker standpoint, since I sell a lot of multifamily. If you can get a multifamily property, especially in the Houston market, C-class property, used to be par was $30,000 a door. Now par is about $42,000 a door on a C-class property. So if you can get a property in the 30s, especially in the 20s, it's almost, to a certain extent, get it under contract no matter what, because you have so much room between what par is and what you could possibly sell it for. So multifamily, I think, is a great application for hard money.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah.
The numbers have to work,
and
so forth. What I tell you about hard money, it's a tool.
Right.
It doesn't solve every problem.
Absolutely.
But if used correctly and you understand it, you can figure out the way that a deal can work best for it.
So how do you then, we talked about wholesalers and those folks out there doing and I have no problem with wholesalers whatsoever, doing a really good job of marketing and getting deal opportunities. How does then I come to you with a deal that a wholesaler has brought me, and now I want to do hard money and maybe a rehab to perm loan? How do you guys work with that particular transaction?
Yeah, it's like any other transaction, except there's a wholesaler involved. The wholesalers provide a pretty good service in finding these deals for investors. You always have to check their numbers to make sure that
that's the number one thing you have to do.
That's the number one thing you got to do, and so that's another thing.
Because people see the word wholesale and they automatically think that's what I've learned the psychology from my clients. Hey, Kevin, it's a multifamily. It's a wholesale deal. I said, oh, great. How much? Oh, it's $60,000 a door. Oh, okay. But it's a wholesale deal. Well, the word wholesale is in the email, but that doesn't mean it's a wholesale.
I never thought of that until you said that. That makes sense.
No, it's the psychology of it. I've learned that when people see the word wholesale.
Yeah, it makes sense. Because normally you think wholesale, you think
it's below market.
It's below retail, right?
Exactly.
It's not retail, it's wholesale.
Exactly. But you still have to scrub those numbers.
Yeah, you got to make sure the values are correct. They're going to say it's worth this and it needs this much in repairs. And some of the wholesalers are better about being pretty close on those numbers than others, but they certainly have to. But when they work with a wholesaler, typically it's a very quick transaction.
It is, right.
It's not a 30-day close.
Right.
And typically when they're working with the wholesaler also, they have to put up a non-refundable earnest money. So they may put up $3,000, $5,000.
Right.
That money's gone.
It's gone regardless.
If they close or not. So they have to, if they're new to real estate, I would say tread lightly with the wholesaler.
I agree. I think so. I always kind of equate real estate investment to education: elementary, junior high, high school, college, and PhD. And to me, wholesaling is kind of college level.
Sure.
I don't typically recommend starting with wholesale. Now, some of the wholesalers that listen to this going to send me an email. I know, but I'm just telling you, this is my personal opinion. I've seen it work different ways. It's more complicated.
The ones that are doing it right, the wholesalers that are doing it right, they understand that.
Right.
They don't want to work with beginners.
Right.
Because they're going to, beginners will be like, okay, I'm going to start my option period. And they're like, no, there is no option period. You put up your money now and you got 7 days to close.
Right.
And so they've got to be able to move quickly on it. And so that's the, from our standpoint, that's the only thing that changes is that when we know there's a wholesaler involved, we know we don't have a lot of time.
So
we got to move quickly, and that's what a hard money loan can do also.
And I think wholesale is basically made for hard money.
Pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. They kind of work hand in hand, and I think a lot of people need to understand that. So a couple things before we get out of here. Are there tools out there that you would suggest for people to be able to analyze a deal from a hard money standpoint? And if so, where could they find those tools?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information out there available. If they go to our website, which is noblemoney.com, we have a calculator on there you can use. And actually, we have an app. It's called Noble Mortgage Calculator for Apple and
It's kind of fancy, guys.
Android.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's simple. It's not something that's crazy complicated.
It won't pour my coffee.
No, it won't pour coffee. And it's not going to connect you with people, anything like that.
Right.
But it basically just enables you to put in, the value, the repairs, and what you're buying it for, and it'll tell you how much money, if any, you'd have to bring to closing.
Oh, that's
so
great.
It's really just a calculator to tell you how much money to bring to closing. It'll show you how much profit you would make potentially, or on a buy and hold rental, it'll give you an equity capture number.
Okay.
And so if you have those three numbers, and what's funny is we made this app to help people that are beginner investors and so forth, and then I figured out all my loan officers are using it.
Yeah,
so they're on the phone like, oh yeah, let me tell you how much money.
Right.
Because it spits it out very quickly.
Got you. And so, in the name of the app again?
Noble Mortgage Calculator.
Noble Mortgage Calculator. And so those are the tools out there. I'm kind of moving down to so people can get in touch with you. What other things does Noble Mortgage offer to educate folks? And you mentioned some of the seminars and things. Do you have anything coming up?
Yeah, we have. We typically every month. I don't know when the next one here is Houston, but we have one called Basics and Breakfast that we host at Canopy off of Montrose.
Okay.
That's where I'll get up and I'll speak on financing for an hour. I'll bring in another professional. Like last month, we had someone that did tax protests. He's a property tax consultant. So it's a 2-hour deal. It's free. We do that once a month in Houston and Dallas, and then we have another one that's more of a networking function, which is next Tuesday. Actually, you should come.
Right.
It's at Armadillo Palace over here off of Kirby.
Right.
That's
I think
more
that's
of
the email I got when I replied back. Hey, I need to have Darel on the thing. Yeah. So
yeah, that one's more of a networking function. Gotcha. There's no education involved there. It's free drinks, free food, but it's a great way to meet people. I mean, I picked up a lot of clients there. I've had other clients, connect with each other and start doing business. It's just a great way to network.
And so if people want to get in touch with you or get in touch with Noble Mortgage, how do they do that?
Sure, they can call us here in Houston at 713-680-8100 or our website, noblemoney.com. We also have office in Dallas right now, which is 214-492-0100.
Okay. And phone number locally again one more time?
713-680-8100.
8100. And so just as we close out, are there any other things that I wanted to talk? So Darel and I did not talk before. Literally did this via email. It's the first time I'm talking to him in many long time. Is there anything that I didn't hit that you would want to tell people about hard money or just real estate investing in general?
I think if they're just starting, is education. Get yourself educated. Once you get educated, figure out what it is you want to do, because there's a million ways to make money in real estate. Some people get into real estate, they don't know if they're going to wholesale, they're going to do owner finance, they want to flip. They start chasing too many things. Figure it out. You're going to flip, then flip. If you're going to buy and hold, then focus on buy and hold. And then eventually you can start adding on those other layers.
Get creative later.
Yeah, get creative later. But focus,
Right.
Get it in as close as you can and focus on that. And then get a taste for it and see if it's something that you like, you have a knack for. Some people get into real estate and love it and make it a full-time career. Other people get into it, they'd say, this is a good little side investment, and they're going to keep it that way.
Yeah. So let's end on this. You mentioned that you have a radio show. And so I want to let people know when and where they can hear your radio show.
Sure. So it's we record it on Tuesdays and we Facebook Live it on Tuesdays, actually. Okay. So if they follow us on Facebook Live, we broadcast it then. Other than that, it's broadcasted, I believe it's at 1 o'clock on Saturdays on Business Radio.
Business Radio 1120.
1120, yeah.
Yeah, Business Radio 1120 here in the Houston market, and Facebook Live under Noble Mortgage.
Yeah, under Noble Money or Noble Mortgage. They can go and like our page, or on my personal page too. Gotcha. All right, Darel, hey, I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Guys, hard money is a good tool. Just like Darel said, it's a tool. It's one of the tools that you can use. Hope you had a good sense of what it takes to not only get a hard money loan, but also what a hard money loan is. So now, instead of when people call me at the office and ask me about hard money, I'm just going to start sending this video. I don't have to do a whole long conversation. I'm going to send them this video. They can look at it. So guys, we thank you again for listening to The Real Estate of Life with Kevin Rouse, and I will see you next week. Hey, thanks for listening as always. Do you have questions about any of the topics I'm talking about? If you have questions, let me know. Email me at kevin@kevinrouse.com. Again, that's kevin@kevinrouse.com. I'm going to do a podcast just on the questions that you guys are sending me. So feel free to send them to me. Again, that's kevin@kevinrouse.com.